can even watch back, giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back, giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back, giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion, going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back, giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Monday, July 22nd. Hope everyone is well. And in all transparency, this is recorded a little bit earlier in the day. And by the way, I am in Spain. That's right. I'm in Spain. But because of my promise and our promise at the Sick Podcast that we would bring you the 23-24 season in full, 12 months a year without any interruption, well, until 2024 is over, we're going to hold our promise. So like we mentioned to you, there were going to be abbreviated versions of the Sick Podcast, shorter episodes of the Sick Podcast in the summer, but we are going 12 months a year. Will we go 12 months a year in the summer of 2025? Well, we'll have to wait and see. I can't answer that right now, but we are 2024. So here I am from Spain bringing you the Sick Podcast. And of course, the Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by Bittt Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light, ultra refreshing. Also brought to you by Playground. Play lucky numbers at Playground. Earn your entries daily and return every Sunday for a chance to win a share of the $15,000 in cash prizes with a $5,000 top prize. And on July 28, one lucky winner will take home $10,000 at the $30,000 finale. Visit playground.ca for details. And brought to you by Betway, a leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 years old and play responsibly. A lot has gone on since the last time I was podcasting. And of course, the Montreal Canadiens hired Pascal Vincent to be the head coach of the Laval Rocket. I'm going to bring in Eric Engels of Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. Eric, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for doing this. And I see some daylight. I could tell you that here in Spain, that kind of daylight that you're looking at right now, it goes till about 9:30 p.m. It's unbelievable. So yesterday there were people at the beach until 9:30 p.m. The daylight's there until that time. And then all of a sudden at around 9:30, boom, it gets dark all of a sudden. It's something really.
Well, you must be having the time of your life out there. It's such a beautiful country. Where in Spain are you exactly?
I'm not far from Malaga, as a matter of fact, about an hour from Malaga airport. My youngest is on trial with a professional team. And so we'll see how that goes. As a matter of fact, his first day of pro camp is today. So I'm doing this probably about an hour and a half before his first day of training camp, which I'm going to go watch at a distance, of course, because it's open to the public. And so I'll do that. But it's been a busy month to travel. Of course, as you know, I was in Vegas for the NHL draft, and we were brought to you there by Betway, where we had the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. We had the Recruits Draftcast podcast with Grant McCagg and Shane Gaumont. Shane was there live in Vegas. And we had the Sick Podcast, The Eye Test, with Pierre Maguire and Jimmy Murphy. Jimmy was there in Vegas. So I was in Vegas for about 5 days. I came back about a week later. I left for the Dominican Republic. I was in the beautiful island of Samana, and I spent a week there, and then I was home for 36 hours, and I left for Spain. So I'll be here for quite some time, and then I'll make my way back in the middle of August.
Exciting. So it's Marco.
Yes, Marco spent last year with a U19 team in Portugal, and he's trying to make the jump from U19 to pro soccer. So hence he's in camp, and that's it.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So, and by the way, it is beautiful. I've been to Spain numerous times, but it's my first time in this area. And yesterday I had a chance to visit Marbella, Sotogrande, of course, Malaga. And it's really, really beautiful. It really is. My buddy Pino actually has an apartment here. And I got to tell you, I spent time with Pino yesterday at his apartment. And I looked at it, and I got to tell you, I always thought that I wanted to have a secondary home in Florida, and I'm starting to think I'd like to have a secondary home in Spain instead. All right, anyway, not going to bother anyone, but with that, I brought up Pascal Vincent's name, and I know it's not on the agenda for you and I, but then again, nothing really is. You and I were kind of like off the cuff. We just throw questions at each other, and we're ready for anything, and we can ask anything, we can answer anything. Your thoughts on the Canadiens hiring Pascal Vincent? Because, of course, a lot of names were thrown out there. Whether some really stuck or they were serious or not, I don't know. But, Pascal Vincent's name was out there, and Guy Boucher's name was out there. And of course, Sylvain Favreau's name was out there, and Benoit Groux's name was out there. And there were several others. And in the end, it ends up being Pascal Vincent. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few different thoughts on it. First being that the professional experience of the man certainly lends well to him taking this position, that he was willing to go from the NHL bench back to the AHL, speaks to his desire to write a new chapter in his career. I think he's more than qualified for the job. I think, some people looked at the experience in Columbus as a whole and said, okay, he wasn't really given that fair of a shot there, with management changing and wanting to bring in their own people, and just 1 year, which obviously went well beyond Vincent himself in terms of the turmoil in Columbus, with Mike Babcock being hired and suddenly needing to be replaced on the eve of the season, and him taking over. It weren't ideal circumstances for him to do great. I think people look at him benching a lot of the young players there, whether it was Kent Johnson or Patrick Laine or whoever, and wonder, okay, now he's going to be working with young players in Laval, and is there a concern there? I can only defer to people who have worked with Pascal Vincent. I think about Jonathan Kovacevic, who is now in New Jersey, who sung this guy's praises as the main reason why he was able to make it at the professional level and pierce through at the NHL level, and had nothing but great things to say about working with him in the Winnipeg organization. So, I take that with a lot of value versus my own perception of what I saw in Columbus happen this last year. I think to have somebody of his experience on their bench who knows the NHL and knows the AHL is going to be of great value. He fulfills that. It would be nice, obviously, of course, to promote somebody from the Quebec League, to give opportunity to up and coming, rising coaching stars, and there are some very good ones within that ecosystem. But Pascal has been there too, and he just has that experience, and I think it's going to serve him well and serve the Canadiens well in their prospects. I'm less concerned about some of the stuff I saw in Columbus, and put a bit more value in what I heard from a guy like Jonathan Kovacevic. I first used your pronunciation of his name. Now I'm using the general one. But
Kovacevic, yes.
When you hear somebody like him talk about how valuable Pascal Vincent was to his career, and what that player is making of his career from, let's face it, from long odds, I think there's a lot of stock you have to put into something like that.
You're right. Now, if we take a look at Pascal Vincent's career, and obviously there was a lot of praise when he broke out as the head coach with the juniors in Montreal. Well, he actually broke out with the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles, in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and spent about 7 or 8 seasons there as their head coach, and then to the Montreal Juniors for 3 years. There was a lot of praise. He was an assistant coach for the Winnipeg Jets for about 5 years. There was a lot of praise. He was the head coach of the Manitoba Moose for about 5 years. And even though they missed the playoffs for 3 of the 5, there was a lot of praise. And then he went to Columbus, where he was the assistant coach for a couple of seasons, and there was a lot of praise. And then he became the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets on very, very short notice following the very early firing of Mike Babcock. And then after that, the praise kind of stopped. And I take a look at Aaron Portzline of The Athletic, who has gone on record in writing that, he wasn't crazy about Vincent's handling of the Blue Jackets roster with some of the young players like you talked about, with Adam Fantilli playing on the wing. He questioned that. Defenseman David Jiricek averaging 14 and a half minutes per game before being sent to the minors. Kent Johnson drawing only 13-32 before he suffered that injury. And I'd love to have this discussion with Aaron one day in the very near future, and I will. I promise that. I don't think Aaron's concerns actually were all that big a deal. And we'll, like I said, I'll discuss it on later.
Yeah, they're not out of place, right?
No, and Adam Fantilli would not be the first young centerman who was played on the wing for the first year or two by his coach to ease him into the National Hockey League. The Canadiens did the same thing with Galchenyuk. Didn't work out really well, but because it didn't work out with Galchenyuk, it's happened to other players before. Now, having said that, Adam wrote a very fair piece back in mid-June on Pascal Vincent, The Athletic, and he wrote, Blue Jackets firing of Pascal is no surprise, but they also did him no favors. And I think that's where you were getting to.
Yeah. And I just look at the list of accomplishments you listed off, right? Like what that says to me is a longevity and experience in the game where you learn from things. And I'm sure Pascal took some lessons from the last season, right? That obviously didn't go the way he wanted to. He made what's arguably the most difficult transition in the coaching world, which is going from assistant coach in the NHL to head coach. You're wearing such a different hat as an assistant, right? You're either a guy who maybe you're working under a harder coach and you've got to be the guy who talks everybody up and boosts confidence and that stuff. It's a very vital role. And then all of a sudden you're in the chair where you're the head guy and you've got to kind of undo that. You have to undo that relationship that you've built and create more of an authoritarian, dichotomy here. It's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. And I have no doubt that he would look back on the last year and say, you know what, where I did this, and this, maybe in retrospect, I would have done it this way. I'm sure he's not full of regrets. And at the end of the day, you make your decisions and you live with them, whether they work or they don't, and you learn. Yeah. And I think somebody with his track record, somebody who's been around this long and gone through all these different phases within and risen the ranks of the coaching world, they have enough perspective to be able to learn from situations and apply immediately. And I think with the other thing is you take it away from Pascal Vincent himself and you look at the organization of the Montreal Canadiens and how things have become kind of harmonized under Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes and John Sedgwick, who's running Laval, and Marty St. Louis, and all these different people. I think you're giving Vincent, especially with the players that are coming into Laval, more of a platform to succeed and apply from those lessons and be good. I have no reason to believe it won't be a good experience for him and for them, but we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point, by the way. Very tough to go from assistant coach to head coach within the same organization when you've coached some of those players for a year or two as their assistant coach. Now you go from the assistant coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets to the head coach of the Seattle Kraken, and you haven't worked with any of those players during that time. You go to Seattle, they don't know what you were before. It's a brand new start. It's a fresh start, and you could be the coach. But like you said, going from Mr. Nice Guy probably for a couple of years to being down the guy who lays down the law, it's a tough situation. Anyway, I would imagine, and I'd love to talk to Pascal at some point as well, and I can promise you that we will. I can imagine, though, that, you know what, the Canadiens, for him to take that job, they must have made him a couple of promises, whether they've said it or not. One of them is, you know what, if you can show us what you can do, pretty good chance that at one point you'll be promoted.
I think they're giving him a platform to be able to prove himself up to go anywhere beyond that. I also think, like, it's a pretty good situation to be in that market if you're going back to the American Hockey League. Just also where Columbus was at, Columbus where they were at over the last year reminds me a lot of like where the Canadiens were kind of in the COVID era, where there just a bunch of things happened that created a very unstable and like sketchy kind of situation where there's too much drama around the team, and it seems like it's never ending.
Oh yeah.
You know, like in Columbus, it's been a year of nothing but drama, and I'm sure everybody's ready to move on from it. So,
yeah.
But those are hard times, and hard times, no matter what walk of life you are in, are essential to getting yourself to the next level, getting through that and finding that. So maybe good things are on the horizon for Columbus. The other thing is, Tony, I think Pascal was kind of late into the fray of this Laval Rocket coaching search. I think there was a lot of people that they looked at. And for the Canadiens to have chosen him, it's not just because of his track record. Whatever happened in that interview process, they walked away from it saying, this is our guy, even above some really good candidates that we interviewed. Yes. I know they interviewed a lot of them.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you as well that it's they probably didn't promise any. It must have been very open, saying, okay, Pascal, here's the deal. This is going to be a window of opportunity for you, a window to show that, you know what, you can go back to the National Hockey League and be an assistant coach with any other team. You can go back to the National Hockey League and be a head coach with other teams. Or, you know what, you can go back to the National Hockey League and be an assistant with the Montreal Canadiens going forward. You can go back to the National Hockey League and maybe one day be the head coach of the Montreal Canadiens, maybe. And so it's an opportunity for you. And it's a return back home for him. And there's a lot of people that say that Laval is one special building in the American Hockey League. Personally, I can't say that I visited other American Hockey League buildings, but I absolutely love it. I think it's so cozy and comfortable, and it's got a great fan base as well. All right, let's move on, because there are a couple of subjects that we want to talk about that, you and I sent each other a text message, and it was actually you who said, you know what, why don't we discuss what the expectations are for Arber Xhekaj? So without further ado, let me just bring up his hockey DB. So for those who can visualize it, Arber Xhekaj is a 23-year-old left-handed defenseman, big man, 6'4", about 240. He was is an undrafted player who played in Kitchener for 4 years, and then from there, or 3.5 years, and from there, the Hamilton Bulldogs. Had a lot of success with the Hamilton Bulldogs, and then goes to Canadiens camp. There's a couple of injuries, surprises the hockey world, maybe even himself, makes the Montreal Canadiens in his year one, plays 51 games, 5 goals, 8 assists, 13 points, has an injury. Comes back in year two. Now he's less of a surprise because everyone knows him. Plays 44 games, has an injury again. At one point, he's sent down to Laval Rocket for 17 games. Jaden Struble comes up. 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points for the Canadiens. Took a while for him to get back into his groove after being recalled from the Rocket. But then once he did, he probably played the best hockey that he's played in the National Hockey League down the stretch. So what are the expectations for Arber Xhekaj on a team that is stacked with defensemen, older, middle-aged, younger prospects, and especially on the left side? What are your expectations?
Honestly, Tony, I there's a couple of things that pop out to me right away as you have this chart right in front of us, right? The first thing that I look at is 95. You locate that number there?
Yeah.
You see where it is? Yeah. 95 NHL games.
Correct.
That's what this player has played. And I think this year is going to be the most decisive in determining what his trajectory is as an NHL player. Because when I look at this player and I see all the tools that he has and what he can do if he brings them together, I look at him in the category of the Harris, Barron, Struble, Xhekaj. You put those 4 guys together, to me, he has the most potential to become a top 4 defenseman out of all of them because of the complete package that he brings. Whether or not he hits that potential is going to be, I really think that these next 82 games will give us a much better sense of if he can actually get there.
Here's where the conversation part of me, Eric, gets interesting, because I think it's kind of cool that that's the number that stands out to you, because the number that stands out to me is 17. So here's an undrafted player who goes from junior hockey to the National Hockey League, and after playing in the National Hockey League, got to take a step back, coming back from injury, to play 17 American Hockey League games. We've often talked about the Detroit Red Wings, who had started it with Jimmy Devellano, and then later on with Ken Holland, and from Ken Holland to Steve Yzerman, that, you know, one of their models within the organization is that unless he's a phenom, most of their prospects will play 3 years or a total of 250, American Hockey League games. That guy is an undrafted player who goes from junior to the NHL and takes one step back for only 17 American Hockey League games and is back. So I love what you said, and good for you for putting yourself out there to say most potential to crack the top 4. But would going back to the American Hockey League at some point over the next year or two, because we've seen National Hockey League players also do that, would it shock you?
No, but that's why I say that these will be the most determining games that are coming up here this season in terms of being able to project where he actually ends up. When I talk about his potential to be a top 4 defenseman, believe me, that's not just my opinion. That is like the opinion of a lot of scouts that go and watch the Canadiens on a regular basis. They look at him and say, if this guy puts it all together, that's where he should go. That's where he should end up. Now, is it going to be a failure if Arber Xhekaj ends up being a really steady number 5 defenseman for the rest of his career? Absolutely not. I mean, especially considering the unconventional path that he took to the NHL and the limited experience in the American Hockey League. I'm not knocking it off or out of the equation that he ends up there at any point, but he's also due a new contract. He's coming out of entry level, so that becomes a complicated situation. And also, I think those 17 games that he played, no matter how hard it was at the beginning for him to accept that he was there, that he had taken that step down, they will prove to be among the most valuable ones of professional experience he has if he's able to go and get those next steps that he needs to take. And I think he will look back on them and say, yeah, I mean, I think he was doing that already this year. This was a big year of maturation for him. It really was. Like, he grew up a lot this year, not just in terms of owning his physicality or what. He mentally grew up a lot this year with what he experienced, and the injuries challenged him, and going down, and the confidence and the hit to the confidence and redeeming it and getting through those first couple games back in Montreal where everybody was saying, I'm not sure he still belongs up here.
Yeah.
But then, you know, the patience kind of from everybody around him was there. And he settled in, and I agree with you. I think we saw elements of his game that were lacking before that suddenly came to the forefront. Now, if he builds on that.
Discipline was one, by the way. Discipline was one in the final month of the season. He
was better picking his spots for sure.
Correct.
He's still going to take penalties, and you want him to. You want him to be who he is. Georges Laraque has been on the record on that several times.
Yeah.
Don't denaturalize what this is, because you've got something that's kind of a unicorn. The Canadiens know. And Arber knows. And I think they found that symmetry together.
Yeah.
Now it's time to build on it. And that's why I say that he's at 95 games, and you look at the next 82, they're going to tell us almost everything we need to know about what his projectability is.
Okay.
I see it. I see all those elements, the physicality. I look at the point totals that you had on that board and say they can go higher with what he has. From offensive blue line in, by the way, he is a very good player, a player you should not underestimate. He really has poise with the puck. He finds shooting lanes. I thought he did a better job in his rookie season of finding the shooting lanes. They got shut down on him a little bit, but confidence was in a different place in his second year. I think he's going to take all that experience, and if he's able to do that and combine the different skill sets that he has, there's no question in my mind that he could become what a lot of people, not just myself, believe he can be, which is a really solid number 4 who does all kinds of things that you would kill to have in your lineup if you were on the team.
From an offensive instincts point of view, I have to admit, he surprised me last season. There were times that he was able to get away from the player in front of him to unleash his shot that I didn't think he had the ability to get away. And I give him a lot of credit for that. Okay. And I'll admit that, wow, he surprised me. I mean, Lyle Oderline at times used to like do some things and I'm like, whoa, did Lyle Oderline just do that? I'm a little bit surprised. So I thought that was cool. You know, you did something a couple of minutes ago that I love. when my collaborators do it. What did you do? I'll tell you what you did. You put yourself out there and you give a solid opinion. You said, in my opinion, Arber Xhekaj has what it takes more than the others probably to establish himself as a number 4 defenseman for the rest of his career. I love it when people aren't afraid to say things. So I'll put an opinion, just the way I see it, and we'll see if I think next year, if he's healthy, Mike Matheson plays every game for the Canadiens. I think next year, if he's healthy, David Savard plays every game, but I think he's going to get moved at the deadline or a couple of weeks before. That's my opinion. And I think Caden Gooley will play every game. Other than that, I think all the rest are going to be on a rotation. I don't know if Xhekaj is going to end up missing more or less than the Hudsons and the Harrises and the Strubles, maybe the Barons of this world. And right now, today, I don't think Mailloux will start with the Canadiens, but I think that if Savard gets moved out, which I expect him to, at that point, Mailloux comes up, and that's the way it's going to go down. So I'll say this: Matheson, Savard, Gooley play all the games up until Savard's probably traded. All the others are part of a rotation.
You know what I like about their situation? You look at those guys that you just mentioned, the Harrises, Barron, Xhekaj, Struble now, but mostly the first 3 guys. They've been in that situation since they came in. This internal competition has been extremely strong, and they've learned to live with it and adapt to it and understand it. They're all close off the ice. They're all very cognizant of how much they are in competition with each other. They all root for each other. Jordan Harris said something earlier in the year where he talked about his high school coach and what an impact it made on him, saying a rising tide lifts all boats. And I don't know which one of those defensemen is going to heed that and really get it back to really take advantage of that mentality the most. But I'm telling you, I when I say that Arber has the ability to become a top 4 defenseman, I'm not talking about over the next 82 games. I just think the next 82 will really show us where he's going.
Here's something, though. Let's say I'm right, and the other defensemen that we just talked about, they're all part of this rotation. Out of all those other defensemen, including Xhekaj, which one, if he's a healthy scratch more than the others, would actually hurt him to be out of the lineup more than the others? Because you said something that I don't know if I agree with just yet, because let's take a look at ceilings. Xhekaj has a ceiling. Hudson has a ceiling. Mailloux has a ceiling. Struble has a ceiling. Barron, they all have a ceiling. Which ceiling is higher? I think probably Hudson has the highest ceiling, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay. But if Xhekaj misses as many games or more than the others, would it stunt his development more than the others? And I don't know if it will. Like, I have a feeling that if Hudson is a healthy scratch more than the other players, that will, and I'm not even sure if that'll hurt him either, because he might have the
scenario
body type that he needs to rest every now and
then.
then.
But you would agree that's not even a scenario. If Hudson is in a place where he's not cracking the lineup, he's not playing in the NHL, he's playing in the AHL. They have the ability to use the clock to their advantage, and they're going to do that with Mailloux, with Hudson, with Reinbacher, with anybody. With anybody who has that ability to go back and forth between Montreal and Laval. Any one of those 3 players I just mentioned is going to be in Montreal if that's where they belong. But it's going to be in the lineup. It's not going to be at a rotation at the back end of the lineup.
Okay, that you just answered my question. I was going to ask, so you think that if Hudson makes the team, he's not part of a rotation?
If Hudson makes the team, it's because he's playing. I would say the same of Mailloux, and I would say the same of Reinbacher. The difference with Xhekaj is due a contract. He's going to sign it, and that waiver eligibility is not the same. It's not the same for Harris. It's not the same for Barron. And I would agree with you that even in that situation with Struble there, if nobody moves between now and the beginning of the season, you are going to have one guy who's sitting on the outside looking in. They've lost Kovacevic, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
And now, are they going to go sign a veteran defenseman because they'd rather have somebody like that in the 7 hole? rather than create this rotation where you're missing some key development. Because I think that if Xhekaj were to sit out on a semi-regular basis, I think it would really hurt his potential and his trajectory and what could become of a player that we all agree is a unique commodity. And yet there are not a lot of guys who bring the elements that he has, plus can really play the game. Like, he can skate, he has offensive ability, he is getting better defensively, but how many of those guys that are so physical and just beasts on the blue line have those skills? They don't. Like, he has a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot. He finds his lanes in the offensive zone, and he's getting better defensively. He's never going to be the best puck mover on their blue line, but he doesn't have to be if he brings all those other things. And if you're sitting him out every second, third game, you're going to really affect that situation. And that's why when you look at those other three guys, Tony, and I've said this from the start with you, if Mayu and Hudson and Reinbacher start the year in the AHL because none of them have shown that they could be full-time in that six, I don't think it's a scenario where they're sitting out every third game. Like, there's no reason to do that.
Not the end of the world. And you just threw a scenario out there, which is possible. And that is the season opens up. The waiver wire goes through. Teams will put some players on waivers. You can go out and pick up a player on waivers the way the Canadiens did with Kovacevic, by the way, is a player that was picked up on waivers. Right? If memory serves me well, he was picked up on waivers. Yeah. And you can do that. You could pick up a veteran who you'll say, you know what, I'll pick him up and he'll be my number 7. And he'll come into the lineup if there's injuries.
And you don't have to do that until you are on the eve of the season, which is what they did with Kovacevic.
Correct.
Because they can wait to see how camp develops and say, you know what, the way Hudson is playing, we're not going to be able to take him out of our lineup. So we don't have to go in. That's why they moved Kovacevic to begin with. They wanted to give him opportunity, but obviously they've got a huge crowded competition coming in on the blue line. And if none of those three emerge as sure bet they belong in the NHL starting lineup, then they could go make that decision and say, you know what, we're going to buy them time. If one or two or even all three of them emerge, Kent Hughes is going to have some work to do to not put himself in a situation where he has to sit a Xhekaj every 3 games or do something. So it's going to be, that is obviously the most compelling storyline going into camp, is this crowded blue line and how it shakes out. And that rising tide lifts all boats thing, that's going to get put to the test. And it's going to be so interesting to see who emerges out of those guys, because you look at Arber to Harris to everyone in between there, those 3-4 guys, Struble and Barron, they're all in that 95 games to 130 games experience. Obviously, Struble has, whatever he had last year is a little less, but those guys are going to be in a dogfight. Like, they're competing with 3 guys coming up who are going to have long NHL careers and be very effective players, I believe.
So here we go. Lastly, in ending, and we are third week of July, and I know our opinions will most likely change in the next 2.5 months. But if you'd have to say so now, and I'll give you mine, will your defense pairings differ from mine to start the season? And once again, these are just early predictions, third week of July. Matheson playing with Gouli, who's playing on the right side. Hudson on the left with David Savard on the right side. And Xhekaj and Struble. That's your top 6. Those are my predictions, third week of July for opening night of the season. Yours are?
Oh, my God. You're honestly, I find it so hard to do. It's so hard to do. Assuming all these guys are back, like, I wouldn't bet against Jordan Harris.
No,
like it's so hard to figure out. I wouldn't bet against Logan Mailloux either. Like, what I saw from him in the AHL last year, and even what I saw in his first game playing in the NHL, like, I think that player is going to be a very, very good player for a long time. And like, I'm curious. It's hard. I don't know if I would differ from your 6.
Yeah,
but
I don't disagree with you, by the way. But I've never, I don't really recall seeing a player get hurt by spending an extra 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 games at the American Hockey League level. So that's why I'm looking at that. And plus, he can clear waivers. So that's why I'm looking at that and say, this is my 6 for opening night. But once again, would it shock me if Jordan Harris is playing with Justin Barron? and the Canadiens start the season with 8D? No, wouldn't shock
I
me.
think
I don't get it.
Harris and Struble are in a major competition for that opening night spot. And I agree, probably next to Xhekaj. I agree that if Hudson makes the team, and I have him as the most likely out of the three to make the team between him, Reinbacher, and Mailloux, that he'd probably be playing with David Savard. I think that would be a perfect pairing for him. But if Harris were to make it over Struble, it wouldn't be the end of the world if Hudson was playing with Harris and Xhekaj was playing with Savard. So they have many different ways of doing this. I can't wait to see how it shakes out. But the beauty of their situation is they're not forced to do anything with those three young guys. They are not forced. And so you know that if one of them or two of them even are in that opening night roster, it's because they will have played so undeniably well in camp that you can't just, oh, you know what, numbers game anyways. Those guys have to come to camp with the belief that their play will be rewarded. Like, you cannot go to camp and be like, well, I'm waiver eligible, and even if I play great, they're probably still going to send me down because we have 8, 9, 10 guys here. No. And I'm sure the Canadiens want it this way. They want Mailloux, they want Reinbacher, and they want Hudson coming to camp saying, I'm going to blow the doors off here. Like, that is the best case scenario for them. Force management to make the most difficult decision possible, because that's how you get better as a team. And we talk about how the Canadiens haven't changed that much off the ice this offseason, which is still yet to be determined over the next month and a half or so, that, you know, a move or two could happen that change things a little bit. But one thing that can change is their organic growth and where everybody's at. You look at the experience of those young defense, you look at the guys that are potentially coming in, knocking on the door, and if they come in looking to blow that door off, watch out. Like, they could become a better team than people think they're going to be. But that's, if they don't make certain changes, that'll be the only way that they become a better team, is those experienced guys are ready to take the next step, and the young guys coming in are pushing them almost out of position. Like, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be a Canadiens fan, I think, because they're on the cusp of really becoming what they're supposed to be. And that's why I think management's conservatism over the summer and in July 1st and all that stuff is well placed. Do not do something that's going to damage that long-term future, because I think everybody, even outside of Montreal, looks at the long-term projectability and they see something very healthy there.
I knew conservative was a word. I didn't know conservatism was one. And that's why I've said I would never play Eric Engels in a game of Scrabble. Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. If you see some of the vocabulary that he actually, some of the words that he uses in his articles and the vocabulary that he uses here in the Sick Podcast, you can definitely understand why I wouldn't play a game of Scrabble with him. Eric, great chat as always. And I'll talk to you again next week. Thanks so much, my friend.
Enjoy Spain and good luck to Marco.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Special thanks, of course, to Energy Transportation Group, to Bittt TV, to Playground, and to Betway, of course, for being our partners and our sponsors. And special thanks to all of you for watching the Sick Podcast. If you like it, share with your friends. Comment Sick, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. For Agnello and Sammy at Master Control, I'm Marinaro. The Sick Podcast will be back tomorrow night. Thanks for watching, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Laval.tb. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.